Okay, can anyone hear me? Okay. Okay, let's start. Okay. So I do hope you guys enjoy your stay home right now, because the governor just announced that we need to stay home all the time until the end of June, I think. But anyway, I think that's actually a very good choice. As we mentioned before, our next midterm, I think midterm 2 will be taken on next Monday, on July 6th. As we mentioned before, the midterm 2 will be taken on 9. So you're probably gonna see your midterm gonna post under your blackboard under the exam, okay, near the quiz, below the quiz. I will open the midterm in the morning of on Monday. The midterm will be open to you from 8 a.m. and I will give you some student. I give you extra time to finish the midterm. The closing time for the midterm will be 12, the midnight of Monday. So you have around 20, no, a lot of time, more than enough time to finish the exam. So make sure that you come to the blackboard and take the midterm. And as I mentioned before, the midterm will be all multiple choice questions. It will be all multiple choice questions. Okay, it will take from chapter 9, chapter 10, and chapter 12. Okay, these 3 chapters. Once you open your midterm, you will only have 1, okay, submission chance. So you can take as long as you want. Okay, the midterm will open from 8 a.m. okay, to the midnight, so it's like 11:59 p.m. So you have a lot of time. You have around, I think, 16 hours to finish this one. But however, you only have 1 submit chance. Make sure that you only submit these things once you finish all the questions. Okay, make sure that you only submit your answers once you finish all the questions. If you want to leave between the midterm, if, for example, you have some situation you need to take care of, okay, you can click save. But please do not click submit, okay? You can click save and come back later. Okay, make sure you understand that, okay? You only have 1 time, okay? The submit is 1 time. Once you submit it, okay, the system will automatically grade it. So you get a grade for the answers you submit. Make sure you submit it once you answer all the questions. You're probably gonna see around 60 to 65 multiple choice questions. Because this is a take-home class and now we are all doing these things online, which means I cannot protocol the exam. Even though I say you cannot using book, open your book, open notes, but I mean, I don't have the power to, check you, okay? So, I mean, it's okay. It's okay for you to use your book or using a note, okay? We give you a very, very flexible policy on the midterm already. So again, for the student that come later, make sure that you only submit your answer once you finish all the questions. Make sure you understand that, okay? Our midterm will be next Monday, and next Monday, so that's, okay, April 6th, Monday. Okay, so do you have any questions? If you have any questions, you can ask me in the chat room if you have any question regarding the midterms. No? Some of you guys send me an email that well, I'm going to post that very soon. Some of you guys send me an email about say how can I reopen the quiz for? I'm sorry, as I mentioned before, this kind of quiz I can reopen the homework right now because we change our things to online. But however, the quiz I cannot reopen the quiz if you miss the deadline for the quiz. I'm not able to reopen it. Okay. But however, the quiz, as I mentioned, the quiz is extra credit, so you don't need to worry about that. This will affect your grade or not. Okay, this won't affect your grade. Okay, this will be extra credit. Okay, I'm sorry, my handwriting is so bad. Okay, so the quiz will be extra credit. I'm gonna post another quiz 5 after today's class. So make sure you spend some time to do the homework. Would help us to study the quiz. What should we use to help us to study the quiz? I think after the homework and the quiz, okay, if you go back, for example, if you go back to the homework and quiz, I think I give all the, for example, if I go back the quiz, I think it will automatically, I think, give you all the answers, right? Can you see your answers after you? I think I have these things. So yeah, after the third attempt, yeah, okay, it will give you the feedback. So you can actually go back to your quiz, okay, and it will allow you to print all the quiz, and so you can study your quiz very, very well. The quiz 4, we have 15 questions. So make sure that if you want to prepare well for your next midterm, study the quiz will be very good. When are you posting the test script for midterm 1? Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm sorry. I know some of you guys sent me a very, very long time ago. I'm a little bit far behind, but don't worry. If you send me a test correction, you should be fine. No need to worry about that. Okay. And one of the question I would like to ask you, some students send me an email say that we never have a quiz for chapter 10. So I would like to ask you, I remember because I was teaching two classes at the same time. Do I actually give you a quiz about chapter 10 about pure competition market model right here? I think I give you a quiz on the last Monday's class, the last class before the spring break about chapter 10, right? Can anyone tell me in the chat, in the group chat? Because one student sent me an email say that we actually only have two quizzes right now, but in my opinion, when I check my history, I think we already have 3 quizzes. So that's why I put the quiz on here is quiz 4. Did I ever give you a quiz about chapter 10 about the pure competition market model? Anyone? I think I do. I think I do give you a quiz about this, right? Okay, if you are not answering, then I assume that I already give you a quiz about this one. Okay. So that's sum up for all the questions about the quiz and the midterm. If you missed the midterm, I'm sorry. If you do have some emergency issue next Monday, make sure you send email to me before Monday, so I can actually schedule. I will find a way for you to take the midterm another time. But if you miss the midterm on Monday, same as the quiz, because this is the exam, it's not the homework. If you miss the midterm on Monday, I cannot reopen the midterm just for you. So if you do have something happen, you need to reschedule your midterm. Make sure you send an email to me earlier, so I can reschedule your time to take the midterm. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, today we're going to finish chapter 16. Okay, chapter 16 is what we talk about demand for resource. Excuse me. If you know that in chapter 2, when we talk about the circular flow model, what is the resource? Okay, if we go back to chapter 2 here, this is what we learned a long time ago at the very beginning of this semester. We talk about the circular flow model. So right here. So the resource we are talking about is the household who sell the resource to the resource market and the business to buy the resource from the resource market. And what are the resource? Okay, and here are the resource. Okay, the resource belong to the household, it belong to the citizen, belong to each individual people. The resource we talk about in chapter 2, including land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship ability. In order to get income, the household will sell the resource from the resource market. And in order to produce product, the business and the company need to buy the resource from the resource market. So you do need to know the resource is a connection between the business to household. The resource is the household sell to the business, and the business is the one who buy the resource from the household. Once you remember that, review that, you need to know. So in this whole chapter, we're going to talk about the demand for resource. And for this whole chapter, you need to know that the idea or the example, what we talk about resource in this chapter is all labors. Okay, we are talking about labors in this chapter. So whenever we talk about resource in chapter 16, we only talk about one factor of the resource. So if you still remember the resource have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. But however, in chapter 16, in order to make you understand this chapter easily and make sure you understand all the example questions in this chapter easily, whenever we talk about resource, we are talking about labor. Okay, labors. Okay, what is labors? The labors is the people who get hired. Okay, it's the employees, the human resource. Okay. So this is chapter 16. Let's start. I'm sorry, I live near the naval base, so you can hear the noise. Okay. So in this chapter, we're going to learn how to determine the money income for the household. Again, the household who sell the resource on the resource market is the only way they can get the income. And the money income including the rent, wage, interest, and profit. So in this chapter and on next chapter, on chapter 17, we're going to talk about how the company going to decide the wage to the household, how the company going to determine the resource price for the household. And because the company need to buy the resource from the resource market, okay, because the company need to buy the resource from the resource market, so they need to pay cost to the resource market. So if you're standing at a company side, the resource price is actually one of the huge costs for the business. So the company, they need to think about the cost minimization in order to increase their profit. So the resource pricing is also very, very important for the companies too. And the resource allocation, this is what we talk about human resource. Okay, if you take your managerial class, you're gonna learn about these things a lot. Okay, and the policy issue. The policy issue determine how many laborers the company hire, and what time should the company to have the policy to ask the employee to work for. So for example, the policy issue is now become actually very, very very important right now. Okay, so again, as we mentioned, the policy issue determine the number of the employee. Sorry, my handwriting is so bad. Number of the employees. Okay, so in this very hard time right now, because the COVID-19, you see a lot of companies who actually fire a lot of employees. If you see the news, a lot of companies, they fire a lot of employees. So some industry is going to take a huge hit, a very, very big hit during this kind of hard time. Okay, so the policy issue is actually very, very important right now for the company. They need to make sure that the company is still profitable. In order to gain profit, they need to minimize the cost. And in order to minimize the cost, they're probably going to fire some resource during the hard time, fire some people, employee, to cut the cost. Okay, so this is actually very important right now. what is the reason that the company need to demand for the labor? Okay, the resource demand is directly related to the product demand. Let's go back to chapter 2 if you still remember the circular flow model. The company need to sell products. How can the company to sell products? They need to produce the product first in order to sell the product. And because they need to produce the product, so they need to hire the resource from the resource market. And who's going to buy the product is the household to buy the product from the business. So actually, the demand of the product is positively related to the demand for labor, demand for resource. So back in chapter 16, the demand for resource is directly derived from the demand for product. The demand for resource depend primarily on the demand for the product that it helps to produce. So you will see this is actually very important right now, the resource demand. Can anyone tell me, okay, give me a very good example about what industry, in your opinion, right now during the COVID-19 situation, what industry you think their resource demand is actually decreasing a lot? What industry? If you type your answer on the group chat, I will give you some extra credit. What industry, in your opinion, that will have the resource demand decrease? Gasoline, I think gasoline, I don't think gasoline, yeah, gasoline, the gas station, I don't think it will hit that much because people still going to some, yeah, restaurants are a very good example. And travel, that's correct. Travel are very good example. Also transportation, very, very good job. Okay, so restaurant, travel, transportation, yeah, malls, of course, yeah, very good job. Yeah, Boeing and the airplane company. I don't think the airplane craft, the company who make the airplane will hit. But however, the transportation company, for example, American Airlines, Delta, the transportation company will hit a lot. Yeah, cruise ship industry, of course, yeah, very, very good example. And another industry, very good job, okay, for the student who answered the question correctly, I will give you some extra credit. And another industry that actually decreasing the resource demand a lot is the hotel. Okay, and right now you see, I don't think people will still go to the hotel during this time. Okay, actually the whole vacation industry actually take a huge hit right now. If you see the news online, Williamsburg, the Busch Garden over there, they fired 90% of the employee. It's actually a huge hit. And if you have the annual pass over there, they won't return your annual pass. Anyway, so you see the hotel and the vacation industry take a huge hit. And on the other side, some industry, they actually increase the resource demand a lot. So can anyone give me an example that, in your opinion, what industry actually increased the resource demand in your opinion? Yeah, grocery, yeah, toilet paper. Okay, retail, yes, grocery and retail. Online delivery and food company, very good job. Yes, actually the online delivery and food company, okay, yes, and hand sanitizer, very good job. Amazon and Whole Foods, very good job. Okay, very good job. Yes. So for those, and another very important industry you guys never mentioned, a very important industry right now, the resource. We are talking about people. The people, the employee for that particular industry increase a lot. That industry is actually very important right now. Can anyone tell me? Think. Yeah, that's correct, doctor. Very good job, Sarah. Okay. The medical industry actually increased the resource demand a lot. Okay, so if you see that on Saturday, President Trump come to Norfolk. If you see, okay, the whole Hampton Boulevard is actually locked down because the president's come, and the ship, the medical ship Mercy is actually leaving from Norfolk to New York, and you are arriving in New York. So because of the medical, the medical industry, the resource demand is increased a lot. And because the medical resource demand increase, you will see many medical schools, they actually can make their graduation period actually much faster. For example, the medical school in Maryland, in Delaware, in New York, they actually allow their med students to graduate fast in order to feed the resource demand for the medical industry. Okay, and as you mentioned before, like the online delivery things, like I don't know whether you guys use those things, but I use Fresh, Amazon Fresh, that allow them to deliver fresh grocery right to your door. And I also use Instacart. Okay, I don't go out anymore, even go to grocery shopping, because I'm so scared right now. Virginia Beach now have more than 60 people. Norfolk is right now have more than 20 people. So you will see this number will increase a lot during the next few days, because there are tax, there are more people getting taxed. So in order to be safe, right, the best way for you to do is stay home. Okay, so I'm using Fresh and Instacart. So you should see those two people, the online delivery industry, their resource for demand is actually increased a lot also. Okay, so that will be all for the resource demand. It tells you the demand for the product or the service is actually positively related to the resource of demand. Okay, once you know that, let's continue. Okay. And here, so this is the one of the first thing you probably need to know to calculate, how to calculate this marginal productivity of the resource demand. If you still recall that whenever we talk about product, okay, not resource, whenever we talk about product, we have a marginal product. But however, whenever we talk about resource, we have a marginal product for the resource. So make sure you understand that in chapter 10, when we talk about the pure competition market model, we know that the pure competition market model, the company have no influence for the price of the product. Okay, and at the same time, because there's so many companies in the industry, so the company will have no power to make a decision for the wage also. So at the very beginning of this chapter, we assume that whenever we talk about the marginal product of the resource, we are talking about the perfect competition market model. So what drives the demand for resource is depending on the marginal product of the resource, and it depending on the price of the product. Okay, so the next slide, this is the very important one you need to know. You need to know how to calculate the marginal revenue product. This is very important. We talked about marginal product before, but however, you do need to know how to calculate marginal revenue of the product. Okay, if you still remember, whenever we talk about marginal product, we use the difference of the, okay, we use the difference of the number of the product quantity, okay, divide by the difference of the product, okay, here. However, in here, the marginal revenue product, we use the difference of the change of the total revenue. Okay, so this is the key thing right here, divide by the change of the resource quantity. So make sure you understand that. The marginal revenue product is not exactly the same thing when we talk about marginal product in chapter 9. We talk about these things in chapter 9. If you still recall, this will be covered in your next midterm. But however, marginal revenue product in this chapter, chapter 16, is a difference compared to marginal product. You do need to know how to calculate the marginal revenue product. So how are we going to calculate the marginal revenue product? We use the change of the total revenue divided by the change of the resource quantity. Whenever we talk about, again, we talk about the resource in this whole chapter, we are talking about labor. So the change of the resource quantity is change of the labor, okay? And this is the change of the number of the employee. Okay, So make sure you understand this. The next slide is very important. You're going to see some question from this slide. So make sure you understand this slide. So it's actually give you some questions regarding the marginal product here and the marginal revenue product. You will see the marginal product, it won't be equal to our marginal revenue product. These two things are totally different. In order to calculate the marginal product, you need to use the difference of the total product divided by the difference of the labor. So how are we going to calculate the difference, the marginal product? For example, how are we going to calculate this phi right here? This phi right here. We use the difference of the total product. We use 18 minus 13 divided by the difference of the labor, 3 minus 2. So what we got is 5 is equal to 5. Okay, so this is our marginal product right here. And as we mentioned, okay, because we are in a pure competition market model, so the price will be always the same as we mentioned before. So how are we going to calculate the total revenue? We use the total price, the price here multiplied by the quantity. So for example, how we got this 36? How we get this 36? Okay, the 36, it will be equal to 18 multiplied by 2. It will be equal to these things multiplied by 2. It will be equal to 36. So on the other side, how are we going to calculate the marginal revenue of the product? We calculate the difference of the total revenue. So for example, how are we going to get this 6 right here? We need to use the difference of the total revenue. So we have two ways. Okay, so the first way is we use the difference of the total revenue divided by the difference of the labor. So what we got is the difference of total revenue. How we get this 6 here? We use 50 minus 44 and divide by 5 minus 4. It will be equal to 6. Okay? Or we can use another way, which is an easy way. But however, this easy way only fit for the pure competition market model. Okay? How we get the marginal revenue product? We use the marginal product multiplied by the price. Okay, again, let me use another. Okay, how we get the marginal revenue product? We use marginal product here multiplied by the price. So how we got this 6 here? We're using 3 multiplied by 2. So what we got 6. So using 3 multiplied by 2 is got 6. But however, this way only available for the pure competition market model. The reason behind this is because only under the pure competition market model, the price is remain constant all the time. If you still remember, for the monopoly, the price won't be always equal to the same thing. It will be changed all the time. So in order to calculate the marginal revenue product, we have two ways. Okay, this is the first way, this is the second way. However, the second way only for the pure competition market model. Okay, do you guys understand? Make sure you understand these things. On your exam, you're gonna see I will only give you the first 2 columns. I'm gonna ask you some number, how to get this number, how to get this number, how to get this number, and how to get this number. Okay, very easy questions. Make sure you understand that. Okay, if you understand, let's continue. Okay, if you don't understand, you can always go back to my YouTube and see the video again. Okay, and the marginal revenue product and the resource demand. Okay, the resource demand is actually exactly the same thing as the product demand. If you still recall in chapter 3, when we talk about product demand, we talk about the law of the demand. The demand is negatively related to the price. So the product demand curve, it will be a downsloping curve. The resource demand curve is exactly the same thing compared to the product demand. The resource demand curve will be also a downsloping curve. it will be also a downsloping curve. Okay, so the reason behind this is because of the productivity of the labor. Some students, they may not understand why the resource demand, okay, the marginal revenue product is always decreased. It's all because of the product of the labor. So for example, I'm sorry, okay, for example, okay, if a company, for example, we have a company, they need to produce 60 products, okay, for example, they need to produce 60 apples, okay. If they only hire one employee, okay, then this one people, at the end of the time, no matter how long it would take, he alone needs to producing these six apples by himself, right? So the productivity for one people is 60. But however, if the company going to hire 2 people, then each of the people will only need to produce 30 apples. And if the company need to hire more people, for example, they're going to hire 5 people, then each one of them, they only need to produce 12 apples. But however, this is actually exactly in a very, very dream situation, because you are not going to expect all these 5 people going to work as the same efficient, okay? As the matter of fact, actually, if the company hire more people, for example, we have A, B, C, D, E people in these 5 people. Okay, if one people is actually very lazy, for example, E, he's actually very lazy. So he assumed the other 4 people will produce more. So he becomes so lazy. So for example, he only produces like 5 apples, which means the other 4 people here, A, B, C, they need to produce more than 12 apples in order to get the gain and get the aim here. So that's why the marginal revenue product is decreasing is because the productivity of the labor. And this is one of the reasons whenever I talk to my student, okay, if you still recall at the very beginning of this class, I say you need to have a group project, right? Okay, I have these things a lot. A long time ago, I say the group can up to 5 people. The group project, you can up to 5 people. But more than 5 people, if you have 5 people in your group, if you are a student, you know that if you have 5 people in your group, there are always there's one people is so lazy, right? Very, very lazy. He did not contribute at all, which make the whole group, the efficiency is very, very low. So this is exactly a very good example for the productivity of the labor, okay? So you do need to know the law of the diminishing return. We talk about these things in chapter 12 and chapter 9. Is the marginal product will decrease as the labor going to increase. There's a negative relationship between the marginal product and the labor, okay? Make sure you understand that. Okay, so in here, if one worker can pick $30 worth of grape and 2 workers together can pick $50 worth of grape, it asks you, what should the marginal revenue product for the second worker? Okay, so this is actually very, very easy to understand. So the difference of the total revenue, we're using 15 minus, okay, 15 minus 30. And the difference of the people, we're using 2 workers minus 1. So what we got the marginal revenue of product, it will be equal to 20. Okay. So the answer of this question is the marginal revenue product for the second worker is equal to 20. Okay, very, very easy. Okay, make sure you understand that. The next question here. Assume the labor is the only variable input and that an additional input of the labor increases the total output from 72 to 78 and the product is sold for $6 per unit in a pure competition market model. It asks you what will be the marginal revenue additional worker. Okay, as we mentioned before, we have 2 ways to calculate the marginal revenue of the product. The first way is we use the change of the total revenue divided by the change of the labor. So how are we going to calculate the change of the total revenue? We're using 72 multiplied by 6. Okay, this is the O. I'm sorry. This is the old revenue. Okay, the new revenue is equal to 78 minus 6 and minus 72 multiplied by 6. Okay, so this is our total change of the revenue and divided by the labor. Right here, the change of the labor we use, okay, because we are only talking about one additional, so the labor right here is equal to 1. So what we have here is equal to 36. Okay, and another way, as we mentioned, we can directly using the marginal product multiply the price. Okay, how are we going to calculate the marginal product? The marginal product, we're using the change of the unit. So we're using 78 minus 72 and divide by 1. So what we got is equal to 6. And the price is also equal to 6. So 6 multiplied by 6 is equal to 36. Okay. Yeah, yes. Okay. So you can use both ways to calculate for the marginal revenue product under the pure competition market model. Okay. Make sure you understand that. Once you know that, it should be very easy for you to understand this. So you need to know how to do these kind of questions. I'm sorry, right here. Okay, how to calculate the marginal product? We're using the change of the marginal product. For example, how we're going to calculate this number here? We're using 46 minus 31. Okay, so what we got is equal to 15. Okay, and how we got this total revenue? We're using 2 multiplied 46. So what we got is 92. How we get this marginal revenue product? Because we see this price is always equal to the same thing. So we know this is a pure competition market model. So marginal revenue product will directly equal to the marginal product multiplied by 2. So it's equal to 15 multiplied by 2 is equal to 30. Make sure you understand how to do these kind of questions. Okay, it should be very easy. Okay, so that's the marginal revenue product. And in here, we're going to talk about the marginal resource cost. The marginal resource cost is again a little bit different compared to marginal cost. Okay, these two things are not equal to each other. Okay, the marginal resource cost is totally different. The marginal resource cost, we are talking about the labor right here. Okay, we are talking about the change of the labor. And the change of the total cost, we are talking about the human resource cost. Okay, the marginal resource cost talk about the change in total resource cost by hiring one more labor. Okay, so this is totally different compared to the marginal cost. If you still recall, the marginal cost, we're using the change of the total cost divided by the change of the quantity. And the quantity, we are talking about product. And the marginal resource cost here, we are talking about labor. And labor, we are talking about people. Okay, this is people. Okay, so make sure you understand that these two things are not equal to each other. Okay, should be very easy. And here, next one. So how are we going to calculate the marginal resource cost? We need to use the change of the total cost divided by the change of the labor. And you will see here, okay, the key thing you may see very easy right here. You will see our marginal resource cost. It will be exactly equal to our wage rate. And because we assume we are in a pure competition market model, okay, so the wage rate will be pretty much like the same thing as the price. It will be remain to the same for the price, a pure competition market model. And you will see the marginal resource cost, it will be exactly equal to the wage rate. Because if you want to hire one more worker, for example, compared to you hire 2 workers, if you hire one more worker, the wage is exactly the same. It only costs you $9 more in order to hire one more worker. No matter how many workers you hire, the wage rate will be always the same. So the marginal resource cost, it will be also always equal to the wage rate and it will be equal to the constant number for the pure competition market model. Okay, make sure you understand that. Once you know that, so again, you will see the marginal revenue resource cost, it will be a straight line. The marginal resource cost, it will be exactly equal to our wage rate. Make sure you know that. So now we already know our marginal resource cost and we already know our marginal revenue product. We're going to use the golden rule again. The marginal revenue product equal to our marginal resource cost. So in this case, this marginal revenue product pretty much like our marginal revenue. And this marginal resource cost is pretty much like our marginal cost. So again, as we mentioned, this is the golden rule we use so many times for our class. Okay, but however, whenever we talk about resource, we cannot use a marginal revenue or marginal cost. We're using the marginal revenue product and marginal resource cost. Okay, make sure you know that. Okay, so in order to maximize the profit, the company is going to hire additional resource as long as the additional product produce add more revenue to the cost. So here is the key thing. Very, very important relationship right here. Very, very important. You're gonna see some question right here. Very, very important. Okay, make sure you know that. Okay. So whenever we have the marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost, our profit will be increased as we hire more labor. And whenever our marginal revenue product is smaller than our marginal resource cost, the company will only going to make profit when they hire less labor. And what would be the profit maximization? Okay, the profit maximization is when the marginal, okay, when the marginal revenue of product is exactly equal to our marginal resource cost. And this is our profit maximization rule. Make sure you know these three things here. 1, 2, 3. On the exam, you're going to see some questions asking you to do a case study for these things. They will give you some number of a company asking you what will the company to do in order to increase the profit. Then you need to make a decision to find out what will be the relationship between the marginal revenue product and the marginal resource cost. Okay. So for example, right here, the next slide is right here. So how we get the profit maximization in this case? How we get this? Again, we need to find out that what would be the last unit. This is exactly the same thing when we talk about the profit maximization for the monopoly and pure competition. You find your last labor unit where your marginal revenue product is still large or equal to your marginal revenue cost, resource cost. So in this case, Unit 3, labor 3 is the last unit where your marginal revenue product 10 is still large or equal to your marginal resource cost. Because on Unit 5 or labor 4 here, labor 4 here, your marginal revenue product will be already smaller than marginal resource cost. So this is the last unit where your marginal revenue product is still larger than your marginal resource cost. Okay. Make sure you understand that. We already spent a lot of time to talk about these things. So how are you going to make a decision? So you find your intercept point where your marginal revenue product exactly equal to your marginal resource cost. Should be very easy. Okay, as we mentioned, this is the pure competition market model. You will see a straight line. We talk about these things in chapter 10. Whenever you see a straight line, that's what we talk about pure competition market model. Okay, in here. The question is like this. Okay, Cindy is a baker and run a large cupcake company, and he already hired 11 employees and is thinking about to hire the 12th one. He estimates the 12th order will cost her $100 per day in a wage, and it will increase the revenue from $2,600 to $2,750 per day. So should Cindy hire the 12th worker? So the question right here is asking you how we're going to make a decision. So we need to find out what will be the marginal revenue of product, what will be the marginal resource of cost. We already know the marginal resource of cost will be always equal to the wage rate for the pure competition market model. So we know our marginal resource cost already because this is the wage rate right here. It will be equal to 100. And our marginal revenue product, we're using the difference between the total revenue divided by the difference of the labor. So what we're using is using 2750 minus 2600, and it will be equal to 150. Okay, so we find out that our marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost. So back to our decision rule right here. Okay, if our marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost, then the company should hire more labor to increase the profit. So back in here, so Sandy should hire this 12 worker because its marginal revenue product is equal to 150 and its marginal resource cost is only equal to 100. So it's still higher than the marginal resource cost. So she should hire this 12 worker. Okay. And here, assume a restaurant is hiring a labor in an amount that such the marginal resource cost of the last worker is $16 and her marginal revenue product is equal to 12. So right now we have our marginal revenue product 12 is already smaller than our marginal resource cost 16. So if our marginal revenue product is smaller than our marginal resource cost, then the company should be hire less laborers. He should be fire some worker. So the profit will only increase by hiring fewer workers. So the answer will be B. Okay. So make sure you understand that. Okay. And here, refer to the data if the company is hiring a worker on the pure competition market model and the wage rate is equal to 22. It will imply how many workers. Okay. So how are we going to do that? We need to calculate for the marginal. So we need to, oh, sorry, what happened? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we need to calculate the marginal revenue product first. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We can calculate the marginal product. Here is 12, here is 10, here is 8, here is 6, here is 4, here is 2. And our marginal revenue product, okay, this is MP. Okay. It will be equal to the MP multiplied by the price. So in here, this will be equal to 36. This will be equal to 30. This is equal to 24. This will be equal to 18. This will be equal to 12. This will be equal to 6. And we already know our wage rate, our marginal revenue resource cost, it will be equal to 22 all the time. I'm sorry, my handwriting is so bad. I know that. Okay, so you need to find your last unit where your marginal revenue product is still larger than your marginal resource cost. In this case, it's the unit labor 3 here. This is the last unit. Our marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost. So the answer would be C. Okay, make sure you understand these kind of questions. Okay. Okay. So as we mentioned that the marginal revenue product share the same thing as the demand schedule for the product. So it will be a downsloping curve. Okay, if the wage rate going to increase, the labor will be decreased. If the wage rate going to decrease, the labor going to increase due to the law of the diminishing return. Okay, so for the first part of this chapter, we assume we are in a pure competition market model, and now we assume we are in a monopoly. Okay, so now we are talking about imperfect competition market model. I'm sorry, my son is crying. Okay, imperfect competition in this case, whenever you see an imperfect competition, we are talking about monopoly. Okay, make sure you know that. Okay, so now from this part, from slide 21, we are talking about monopoly. We are not talking about pure competition market anymore. So the major difference you can see is that now the product price will be totally different. Okay, it will be decreased. It will not equal to the same number anymore. Okay, so as you see, so make sure you know that. So for the monopoly, you will know that the marginal revenue product, it won't be equal to our marginal product multiplied by the price anymore. Okay, these things cannot be used for the monopoly. For example, in order to get the marginal revenue product, okay, right here, 4.4, we cannot use the marginal product 4 multiplied by 2 in order to get this. You will see if we're using 4 multiplied by 2, this thing will be equal to 8. But however, our actual marginal revenue product is equal to 4.4. So you cannot use these things, okay? Use the marginal revenue product equal to the marginal product multiplied by the price on the monopoly, because for the monopoly or imperfect competition market model, the price will be different. Okay, make sure you understand that. Okay, the next question right here. So you will see, because for the pure competition market model, the price will be always the same. So it will decreasing at a constant number. So the demand for resource for the pure competition market model, it will be a downsloping straight line. But however, for the imperfect competition, because the price is decreasing, this is not sequence, okay? It's uneven distribution. So you will see the marginal revenue product, the demand for the resource, it will be a curve instead of straight line. So whenever you see this kind of figure on your exam, if it's a straight line, we always talk about that's a pure competition market model. If it's a curve, then it's an imperfect competition market model. Okay? So the first definition question I'm going to ask you in this chapter is right here. I'm going to ask you to compare, okay, the marginal revenue product of the pure competition market model to the monopoly. The first thing you do need to know, whenever we talk about marginal revenue product in this chapter, we are talking about the demand curve. So this is very important right here. Okay, the marginal revenue product, the curve of the marginal revenue product, it will be exactly equal to the demand for labor. And if we compare our monopoly to pure competition market model, you will find out that the monopoly company, their demand curve is steeper. Okay, this is the key thing. This is the key. Okay, this is the key. Okay, steeper than the resource demand for the perfect competition market model. So on your exam, you're gonna see the question like this. So make sure. This is the only definition question I'm gonna ask you for this whole chapter is, if we compare the demand curve for labor for pure competition market model and monopoly market model, what can you tell me? You're gonna say that the demand curve for labor for the imperfect competition for the monopoly, it will be steeper than the pure competition market model. Okay, make sure you understand that. So for example, the marginal revenue product schedule here is exactly, okay, as we mentioned, okay, this is exactly to the demand of the labor. So the answer was the firm's resource demand schedule. As we mentioned, in this whole chapter, if we talk about resource, this is all we talk about is the labor. Okay, make sure you understand that. And the labor demand curve for the pure competition market model compared to, okay, what will be the characteristic of the pure competition market model? Okay, first thing you need to know, because we are talking about demand curve, so it's a downsloping. Okay, so we can choose from A, B, or D. And what will be the reason for the downsloping is we talked about before, is because of the productivity. It's the diminished marginal productivity. The more of the employee a company hire, the productivity is going to decrease. So it's a downsloping curve. Okay, the answer will be B. And right here, all other things equal, we will expect the labor demand curve for monopoly seller, it will be worse compared to the pure competition market model. If you still recall, we know that the demand curve will be steeper for monopoly. Because it's steeper, so the curve will be decline more rapidly compared to the pure competition market model. Okay, so right here, this is exactly the same meaning of the steeper of the demand curve. Okay, make sure you understand that. Okay. We mentioned about these things at the very beginning, that determining of the resource demand, okay, because the demand for the product share the possible relationship between the demand of the resource. So if the demand of the product increase, then the demand of the resource will going to increase. If the demand of the product decrease, then the demand of the resource is going to decrease. So the change of the productivity is one of the major reasons that will change of the product demand. If the productivity is going to increase, the demand of the resource is going to increase. In this case, okay, right here, Okay, some of my previous students, they may have a little bit concern about this. Why, if the productivity is going to increase, why the company is going to use more resource? Okay, in this case, right now, okay, we are not, okay, in here, we are talking about the whole resource at the same time. We are talking about land, material, and labor. Okay, so for example, if a steel company, okay, like 50 years ago, they may only can produce 50 tons per month. But however, now they can producing 100 tons per month. Okay, because their productivity going to increase, so they're gonna need to buy more resource of the steel. They're going to buy more raw material. Okay, and that's the resource too. That's the material you talk about. They're going to buy more raw iron. So the demand for more raw iron going to increase. So this is what we talk about the productivity. Okay, the resource is not only about labor. Okay, it's also have the land, as we mentioned. They also have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Okay, and here this is when we talk about other resource. And the quantity of the other resource and the technology of the ones and the quantity of the variable resource. I'm not going to talk a lot, some detail of these things because we actually going to talk about the determining of the wage on next chapter. And we're going to talk about what determine the wage. And this is actually very important things we're going to cover on next chapter. Okay, so this is actually one of the things you're going to know or you're going to learn on our next chapter, chapter 17, when we talk about the demand, how to determine the wage. I'm here. We already talked about the substituting effect before. Okay, so I don't think I'm gonna test you these things anymore. Okay, we already talked about these things. You don't need to worry about this thing. Okay, again, we talk about these things in chapter 3. If you still remember the substituting effect, we talk about the two products have to share the same function. And then here we talk about resource. We are talking about the same labor. They can do the same job. Okay, this is exactly the same thing. So for example, if we have two people, Tom and Jack, and Tom and Jack can both work as an accountant. So Tom can be counted as a substitute resource compared to Jack because both of them can do the accounting job. Okay, this is what we talk about substitute effect. Okay, I'm not going to test you these things anymore. And the output effect, okay, as I mentioned, I'm not going to test you these things also. The output effect indicates the firm will purchase more of one particular input when the price of the other input falls, and the less of that particular input when the price of the other input increase. So again, you don't need to worry about these things. I'm not going to talk about this. And in here, this is the change of the complementary resource. We also talk about these things in chapter 3. What is the complementary? I'm sorry. I'm not going to test you these things. Okay, what would be the complementary resource when we talk about labor? A good example is if you go to a hospital. Okay, what would be a complementary resource labor for the doctor? The complementary labor would be the nurse. Okay, so for example, if a doctor needs to do a surgery, he needs a complementary labor, human resource in order to finish his job. Okay, he needs a nurse to help him to finish the surgery. So this is what we talk about complementary resource. Okay, again, here the substitute resource. I'm sorry. Again, I live near the naval base, so it's so annoying right now. Anyway, okay, again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to test you these things, the substitute resource, the output effect, and the complementary resource in this chapter. You don't need to worry about that, okay? So you don't need to worry about these things also. I'm not going to test you, okay? Okay, I'm here. Suppose the demand for strawberry increased sharply, resulting in an increased price of the strawberry. As related to the strawberry picker, we should expect that what? So in here, so we know that the demand for product, in this case, the product is strawberry. The demand for product is increased, okay? So strawberry is increased. So we know that the demand for the labor, the people who used to produce strawberry will be also increased. So we know that the demand for labor, the strawberry picker will be also increased. And as we mentioned, the demand for the labor, it will be exactly equal to our marginal revenue product curve, okay? So our marginal revenue curve will also increase. And because we are talking about these things before, and every time, if we talk about economic class, if it's a curve, if it's moving to the right side, then it's increased. If it's moving to the left side, so it's decreased. So the answer for this thing is A, okay? It will shift to right. That's correct, at least, okay? So it will be shift to the right, okay? Answer will be A. And right here, refer to the graph. Other things equal a decrease in price of substitute. Oh, I'm not going to test these things, okay? Again, whenever it relates to the substitute resource, I'm not going to test these things, so you don't worry about these things anymore. Okay, I mean here, this is the last part of this our chapter. You see, this gives you a trend for the occupation employment. It tells you what job will be the very in high demand in the future and what job decrease the demand. Okay, the rising employment in the health service and especially during the COVID-19 situation, the personal care aides, home health aides, and the biomedical engineer, okay, the health service, the demand is actually increased a lot. Okay, so if you see the stock market for the medical industry, their stock price is the only stock that actually increased during this kind of bad time. On the other side, the decline in employment is normally only the labor-intensive industry. For example, like the shoe machine operators, the postal service, mail sorters, and the post service clerks. And actually, during this special time, I think, okay, these two jobs right here, occupation right here, actually increase in demand a lot. I actually would like to thank for all the post service people who deliver all the food and the things to me, okay, during this hard time. I really appreciate their service, okay? And here, this is a table that tells you to compare 2010 to 2020. They actually get this table in 2015, I think. And this year is 2020, so you can actually go to check to find out whether the employment actually increased this much at the end of this year. So you will see again, the first several policies always go to the medical service, the personal care, the home health, the biomedical engineer, those kind of things. So that's why now the medical schools are so popular right now, okay? And you will see the next one here is the most rapidly declining occupation, okay? So you will see like the shoe machine operator, like the switchboard operator, like the textile cutting machine operator. This is all the labor intense industry, okay? Very, it should be, okay, because now the technology is increased a lot. They don't need that, okay, pure labor anymore. So you will see the employment trend is actually decreased a lot for this kind of industry. I'm not going to tell you anything about the electricity in this chapter. You don't need to worry about that, okay? You don't need to worry about anything right here, okay? The electricity, we talk about electricity in chapter 6. When we talk about electricity in chapter 6, we're talking about electricity for the product. And the electricity for resource is exactly the same thing when we talk about for the product. The decision rule is exactly the same. If it's higher than 1, then it's elastic. If it's smaller than 1, then it's inelastic. Okay? So you don't need to worry about anything from here. I'm not going to tell you anything in here. So that'll be all for this chapter. For this whole chapter, we talk about how we're going to decide the resource, the demand for resource. So you do need to know how to do this kind of question right here, the table question right here. Make sure you understand how to calculate marginal resource cost, marginal revenue product, and what will be the major difference between the pure competition market model, okay, and compared to the monopoly market model right here, okay, how are you going to solve for the picture right here, like the monopoly things and the pure competition market model here. Okay, so that'll be all for chapter 16. Before we jump to, before we close tonight, again, my email, okay, I don't know why, okay, I say these things so many times. My email is x1lomg@odu.edu, okay, please send your email to this account, okay, don't send to the Blackboard announcement. I cannot save it. If you have any questions, send to this. some students say that my handwriting and drawing is so bad. So to end this class, let's play a game, okay? I personally create some, okay? I personally draw some company logo right here. If you know what company I draw, I will give you some extra credit. Okay, what is this? Yes, very good job. Okay, look, very good job. Okay, La Costa. Okay, very good job. For the first 3 students who answer this question correct, I will give you some questions. I will give you some extra credit. It's kind of like, you know, the game. Okay, the next one right here. What about this one? I need a name. Name. What's the company name? Good job. Okay, Ralph Lauren. This is Ralph Lauren. Okay. Okay, the next one right here. This one should be easy. Yes, good job. Okay, American Eagle. Okay. And what about this one? What about this one? I see one student answer this correct. Yeah, this is Dunkin' Donut. I'm sorry. Okay, what about this one? This one should be easy, right? Yeah, Pringles, very easy. Yeah. What about this one? This one should be easy too. Yeah, Taco Bell. Good job. Okay, what about this one? This is our last one. Okay, this is our Starbucks. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of like a game because some student who send me an email that say my handwriting is so bad. But anyway, so as we mentioned, our next midterm will be next Monday. Make sure you have some time. Again, I'm sorry. Yeah, my handwriting is so bad. Again, my email, as I mentioned, is x1lng. Oh, right here. It's right here. Okay, it's x1lng. Okay, at odu.edu. Okay. If you have some emergency issue, I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Okay. So make sure that you prepare well for your next midterm. I want you don't for next Monday's class. Okay, what chapter? It will be chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 12. And for next Monday, we won't have our Zoom meeting anymore, so you don't need to come to our class. Okay. Once you take your midterm after the due date, on Tuesday morning, you should be able to see the answers of the midterms. Okay, so you don't need to come to the Zoom meeting next Monday. Okay, you don't need to. Okay, you can do your midterm anytime during that Monday. Okay, but please make sure that you submit your answer at the end of the what they say once you finish all the questions. Yes, I do pick up your test. Why are the homework so much harder than the midterms? Okay, the homeworks are now, because I'm using Connect. The homeworks now are all actually it's the homework that behind your textbook. Okay, so it's actually exactly the same homework. I think, for example, let me see. Actually, okay, homework 4 is due tonight. Make sure you spend some time to finish your homework 4. Okay, it's due tonight. Okay, so now all the homework is all kind of like a table or figure kind of questions that I picked from Connect. Okay, I don't have the resource because ODU actually totally locked down. I cannot actually go back to ODU anymore, so I have to use their resource to do the homework. So it's okay. I mean, it's not that hard. Yeah, all the quiz are extra credit. You don't need to worry about the quiz will be influence your grade. Quiz will be extra credit, and all the extra credit will be given to you as a sum. Okay, it will give it to you at the end of the semester. You will see what will be the total extra credit you get, okay, at the end of the semester. Okay, do you have any more questions? Okay, if you don't, okay, then that'll be all for today's class. I do hope you guys stay safe and stay home, okay, and study well for the next midterm. Okay, have a good night. Bye bye.